Welcome back, MTG Joe here, and we're here for another installment of the weekly meta breakdown. As always, what we try to do in this segment is look at the top performing decks from Platinum to Mythic rank in both Standard and Historic, both best of 1 and best of 3 traditional queues. And we're getting all this data from Untapped GG. It is the premier companion tool for your arena experience. If you're looking to track your games, win rates, find deck lists, find the top decks in the format, it's all free to use with Untapped. If you want to find out more, it's in the link is in the video description below. Click that link. You can install the application for free. Works on Macs, works on PCs. It is the best kind of upgrade you can to your quality of life for Arena. So jumping right into it, we're starting off with Standard. This is from November 14th to the 21st, the 1 week segment, and we're looking Platinum to Mythic for best of 1, 360,000 matches played, and to surprise no one, mono white number 1. We have kind of the older version, but I'm actually more interested in this one just from the sample size, being 6,800 games. And we're seeing kind of some of the new cards settle in. We're seeing some of the numbers true up. So the new cards are Hopeful Initiate, one drop that gets bigger, that also helps you deal with like Ranger's Class or Portable Hole or any sort of the enchantments or artifacts from your opponent. That works out nicely. And then you're seeing the 3 copies of Thalia as well. The rest of the decks look like they're settling on a 2-3 split between Skyclave and Brutal Cathar. So these are kind of the things you look at to see what's working, what's not. Notably, they are shaving down the number of Sun Gold Sentinels to play another aggressive 1-drop. And they've completely eliminated the dog to play the Hopeful Initiate. So kind of the mono white deck. What we then move into are kind of a few different variations of Blood on the Snow deck. You have, they call it Rakdos Control. I think it's more Rakdos mid-range. You have 27 creatures, no control decks playing 27 creatures. It's like a treasure mid-range. So you got like your 1-drop Kalanians to go ahead with the Skullport Merchant into your gold spans. You have some Predators that can sack the small things, Blood in the Snow to recycle your deck. And then there's the Orzhov version, the Edgar version. Playing 4 Edgars. When they die, you basically just flip it and it becomes the coffin, makes you some more tokens. I do like Meat Hook in these. Meat Hook does a really good job of grinding out, and it gives you another cheap answer in the mono white matchup. Sometimes just, you know, X to 1 cleans out a lot of their board. Scorpion's very good as well, just refilling your hand. Really enjoy this card in that style of deck. And then we have the mono black version, Sedgemoor Witch, kind of the same idea. More of the older version with Lulth Zaphorov to Professor Onyx. This one's a little bit more controlling, so I can see this one being deemed more control. We have an installment of mono green Stompy, and it looks again like now we're starting to see how these lists are settling. There's a lot of different variations. People are trying different things. It looks like they're going with 6 accelerants on 2 between Cobra and Sculptor, and then they're playing just an Ascendant Pack Leader as the 1-drop. 3 of the Uvenwald Oddities, and then you have your Chariots. And notably, they're only going to 2 Rangers classes. With mono white being so aggressive, you don't really have time to really set up a Rangers class to kind of level it up when your opponent's smacking you down. You have the mono black Control, mono white aggro, just another variation. This one's a human focused one. You see Valorous Stance, Rally the Ranks, and just a human package. So mono white aggro humans focused. See just another variation of mono black Control. You have Golgari Control. So it's basically pick black and Blood on the Snow with your Treasure Accelerant package and either keep it black or add in another color to your choice. We see another version of Stompy just with like the Cemetery Prowler in there as well, going a bit bigger into Ren and the Unnatural Growth. And we see our first version of Is It Turns. This is not really Turns so much as a Hullbreaker Horror deck. This is Seth Manfield's from the last week's Red Bull. A lot of flexible tools here. This deck here allows you to go over the top, typically of the black decks, but can at times struggle against mono white. We see an Orzhov Clerics deck, the Cleric Pyres deck. Something that makes a lot of sense in these decks, Soaring. You gain so much life to just offset it by drawing cards, because this deck typically ran out of cards, I found, playing it. And This is actually a deck, we're going to feature it. It is only 4 rares, as a 58% win rate. It is mono red goblins, and the only rare is Hobgoblin Bandit Lord. The rest of the deck is all commons and uncommons. So if you're looking to start off with a budget deck, you want to go aggressive. Games take like 5 minutes. It's a good sample size. This list seems pretty legit. We see the proper Is It turns. Really with Is It turns, the thing I look from week to week to see is what their sweeper of choice is. Frost and Fire versus the Burn Down the House. Just things to kind of keep in mind. This can be recycled, but then you don't have to worry about the tokens on the flashback. Mono Black Zombies. This is my list. I believe, yeah, because I just played these. This is my version of the list. I went down Even Death. I didn't have the Headless Horseman, but I actually preferred the Archghoul Fellstinger. This deck was very good as well. Any deck I'm finding that if you could play Meat Hook and be an aggressively slanted deck, just plays really well because you can put pressure, you can sweep them on a white decks, and then against the control decks, you have a way where if they're interacting with you, you could just kind of pick them apart and just drain them here and there. I noticed that my tape and stuff's in the background. I'm in the midst of moving, if you can't tell. My wall of boxes has been slowly moving, but you know, it's not the greatest backdrop right now. We see some werewolves, kind of a cool deck coming in. Nothing like new. This looks just like a stock werewolf list. Tovolar, we see Dimir zombies. Personally, I don't think it's worth a best of one. So blue to me, like, you don't really want to be on an exploit counterspell plan for the most part, and this just adds incidental power. But I think just having the meat hooks drains more that way anyways, and you could play more of a grindy attrition-based matchup. You make your mana base worse, you don't get to play Faceless Havens either. I think in best of 3, I would experiment with Dimir zombies because you get Test of Talents that helps you with the Is It Turns matchup. You get some more control type counter-based spells. Seeing some more mono green. There's just different takes of mono green. We see a Jeskai turns list. Is it actual turns or it's just a Jeskai control list? Just Jeskai control. So Jeskai control with Hullbreaker and Lier. So you're seeing these are like the best friends. They both kind of go like this, and they just hang out together. See some humans coming in, some Orzhov control. This is my list as well. It looks like from earlier in the season with the 2 Kayas. Kaya's garbage. Don't craft it. We were trying it out early, but I wouldn't play that. This looks like my list. I haven't seen many other lists play the Kaya. It was more Super Friends with the one big Kaya on the top end. See some Rakdos Vampires. That's Nassif's list. Is It Turns? Kind of interesting with Jacob. I'm mentioning like some of these are my lists, like I've played, or like some variations. Like kind of the idea Blood on the Snow's been around, but kind of when you see these odd numbers, like if you want to see this video, it's the Orzhov Super Friends list in the standard playlist. If you want to see the Mono Black Zombies list, it's Mythic Zombies. We're up to like top 600 with it. So they're all in the standard playlist if you're interested in seeing actual gameplay of those. So we're just kind of seeing that. Some Simic kind of ramp, Magecraft kind of coming in the bottoms. Azorius Control. This looks to just be kind of a Faithbound Judge version. So we see Dimir Control here, and we're going to kind of flip. So these hard, dedicated Dimir Control decks have not been doing well since like even last set. Actually, this list was kind of cool. I lost to this the other day. It's the Mana Farm Dragon, like all-in Dragon, 8 turns deck. I think CGB made that one. But yeah, these Dimir lists have not been good. When you're going dedicated control, you can't gain life that well outside of Meat Hook. You're playing Infernal Grasp that hurts you. You're not really churning through your deck that well in the non-matchups. If we hop over to best of 3 quickly, this Dimir list, we'll cover the top in a sec, but it's kind of more Dimir mid-rangey control. It's playing Graveyard Trespasser, Nighthawk Scavenger, which is pressure and lifelink to help you stabilize, as well as some Ilmareth. I'd probably at this point drop Ilmareth in place of Hullbreaker Horror. That card's just much better than this as a control finisher. You don't have to tap out on 5, it doesn't get hit by like random removal. But this version here seems a lot better. Your counter spells are more relevant. You have a Path of Peril as a sweeper as well that you're splashing. I think this configuration, just sub in Lier or Hullbreaker Horror, both seem like much better options. Actually, Lier with this one with 7 counter spells doesn't make sense, but kind of give you an idea there. So best of 3, same kind of thing, Platinum to Mythic, 43,000. You're seeing mono green on the top of the ladder. The main board's the same as what we saw in best of 1. The sideboard, we're getting the additions Averbrook Caretaker and the heavy removal matchups, Hexproof being very relevant, and a couple copies of the Cemetery Prowler. We see mono white aggro, which is kind of the go-to. Notably, what you'll see in... So they moved the Elite Spellbinders from the main, and they're just playing Paladin class. Paladin class slows down the Is It Turns deck in the main board. Generally speaking, this is not that great against creature matchups. Doesn't block that favorably, just with 1 toughness. So the Paladin class kind of slows them down. This looks to be the cast 2 spells. So they're going a little bit more weenie 12 1-drops in this particular version. Mono black zombies. So my version of mono black zombies came inspired from this. I cut the Headless Horseman for more card advantage. They're kind of different angles that you attack it. The Horseman leaves you the token immediately. I like the 3/2 better. Just being a 1, like toughness, it just dies to everything. The only nice thing is post sweeper, you do get the tokens remaining, so you don't have to rebuild in the same capacity. 1 card, if you're playing black, you should be playing Ray of Enfeeblement in the side. Just being a 1-mana answer to any threat at a mono white is pretty critical. We're seeing another version of mono white, and you're just going to see slight variations here in terms of the configuration. The core is going to be there. Like you have your 1-drops, 2-drops, Thalia, and then some numbers of Cathar and Redain, just kind of flip-flop in terms of what's good, what's bad. We see this as a turns list. That's actual turns. Again, Burn Down the House is their removal spell. This one's going hard turns. Seeing some Braid as main board instead of Dragonfire. I guess without the dragons, this makes more sense because you can then just pick off the chariots, stuff like that. Another version, this is the Manfield version. We see mono green. This is the Rumty version with the 8 1-drops. And then another version of Dimir Control. I think this one was Croaky's because he was playing the Cemetery Desecrator. Shadow's Verdict seems pretty good right now. It hits most of mono green's threats. Mono white, other than the taxing effects, pretty good. Against zombies, it's really good as well. Just exiling their stuff gets around the removal as well as draining from the meat hook. So hopping over Historic, we weren't able to do Historic last week. This wasn't a big enough sample size. We are going to do it today. 66,000 matches. And the top performing deck in Best of 1 is the Squirrel Twin combo. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Scurry Oak, Heliod, and anything that when it enters the battlefield, you gain a creature. So any of these 3 creatures. Basically what happens is you gain life. With Heliod, you put a counter on Scurry Oak. When a counter goes on Scurry Oak, you create a squirrel, which gains you a life. You put a counter on Scurry Oak and repeat the process infinite times. You gain infinite life, or as fast as you could click in Arena. You create infinite tokens. You can make something infinitely as big, or you make your board infinitely huge. This gets a boost now. You have Voice of the Blessed. This can quickly get out of hand, become a pretty big attacker, and just close out games very quickly. We also see Azorius Affinity. I believe this was Kavartex, if I'm not mistaken. Basically kind of a turbo Thought Monitor deck. You're playing improvised threats in reverse engineer, not threats, well, card advantage. So basically in this deck, this could be 2 mana, draw 3. This could be a 1 mana mana leak, and then you're playing like Graveyard Hate main, which is actually really relevant in Best of 1. There's a lot of graveyard decks. There's the Reanimator decks, there's the Dragonstorm deck, so having Tormont's Crypt main, that's just not a complete dead card, is actually really relevant. You have Nettlecyst, which just gets really big. That's another way to attack. And then you have like Blackstaff to make against sweeper style decks. We see Enchantress actually putting up a pretty good lock. When you're getting more creature-based decks, the lock's actually pretty relevant. There's a lot of decks now that have moved off of Gruul-based strategies, so there's less Bone Crusher Giant. Most decks have moved off Questing Beast as well, so the lock's a lot more relevant in these matchups. Auras coming in again. The notable thing with the auras that we're seeing is the inclusion of Hushbringer in the main. This just shuts off certain decks against Giant Sacrifice, against Shamans, against Neoform. It just shuts them off completely. Speaking of those two decks, we're seeing the Citadel version of Sacrifice putting up some decent results, as well as Temur Neostorm. Basically with this deck, if you're not familiar with it, you cast Seagate Stormcaller, the trigger goes on the stack, you copy a spell with 2 CMC. You cast Neoform, Neoform gets copied. With the copy on the stack, you go into your deck and you get a copy of Dualcaster Mage, which copies a copy of an instant or sorcery on the field. And then basically you get to keep getting Dualcaster Mages, and then you get Glasspool Mimics out of your deck, which copy the Dualcaster Mages. And then you get a copy of Tuk Tuk Rebel Fort, which gives your creatures haste. And then you get a copy of Combat Celebrant, which allows you to have 2 combat steps. And it's basically combo, kill them in that turn. There's also like now Galvanic Iteration. That's also a way to double it up like that. See Madness, which is a deck we've seen. We've seen this mono red deck, which is a deck we've seen. Elves, still notable win rate. The Niv decks coming in. Goblins, Rakdos, really the inclusion of Rakdos is for the Munitions Expert and a single Sling Gang Commander, just kind of combo-y kills. The Shamans list, notably these ones are playing Adventurous Impulse to find creatures, as well as Domri's Ambush as kind of fight spells. Seeing Selesnya Angels, no new tech here, and is it Phoenix? No real tech here from the newest set. So really, this is what I like to do, kind of see what's popping up new, what's not. We have best of 3, Platinum Mythic, 18,000 game sample size, Selesnya Humans. Thalia is taking over all the formats. So this deck here is just a Coco deck, a lot of powerful threats. You have Esper Sentinel to tax, same with Thalia, and then just Ranger kind of lets you pick a toolboxy effect here of your 1-drops as well. This deck's wild. This isn't Auras, this is Azorius Control. So it's a strict proctor. So basically trigger abilities, they gotta pay 2 more. So similar to Hushbringer, but it's all triggered abilities. So with strict proctor, you play Lotus Field and then you don't have to sacrifice your lands. There's also Stifle and Discontinuity to allow you to have this. So then you're just like ramping up in a blue-white shell. You have your sweepers, you went through Approach of the Second Sun. You also have copies of Sphinx's Revelation and 4 Shark Typhoons. This is probably a hard cast Shark matchup. One tech you're seeing in a lot of these white-based decks is for the mirror against humans is Archon of Absolution, just a way to block any big creatures and then tax them on attacks as well. See the same affinity deck that we saw in Best of 1, now in Best of 3, sideboards included here. Seeing copies of Is It Phoenix. This deck's very good. It's a very difficult to play deck. So the performance will vary based on the quality of player, I would say. Squirrel Twin and Best of 3. So kind of same idea. You're getting some other effects like this. One card I'm personally not enamored by is Yasharn in sideboards. So the theory of Yasharn is great. Stops the sacrifice decks. They can't kill it. But a lot of the decks now are playing either Binding, which gets around it. They can sack in response to it, enter the battlefielding, triggering Revolt for Fatal Push. A lot of them are playing 4 Fatal Pushes. They're playing Mortality Spear, a lot of the Golgari versions. And they just have like a lot of removal post-board for something like this. So this isn't like a silver bullet. Like some games it'll run away, but it's just very easy to interact with. I don't think this is necessarily the angle you want to attack those food decks or those sacrifice decks on. And then we see a copy of Niv. So that's pretty much it. Normally what we do too is we highlight any big tournaments. With Arena just dying all weekend, Friday and Sunday. Red Bull got canceled, Stream League got canceled, so there wasn't too many big tournaments. The client's been really glitchy all weekend. But that's pretty much the meta. I think the deck, like I said, I'm going to be most interested in trying out is this 4 rare mono red goblins. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Where did you go, my goblins? Yeah, this goblins list being 4 rares, this is like just a really budget friendly, like easy to start off with deck, especially if you're new to the client. Save your wild cards, stuff like that. Yeah, so that's it. As always, if you do enjoy this type of content, be greatly appreciated if you could drop a like, comment, and subscribe. We will try to get these out as pretty much every week. As I mentioned, I am moving. I will be packing up my PC in the next couple of days, so going to be kind of sparingly on both Arena and videos for a couple of weeks as I get settled into my new place. Appreciate the continued support. And speaking of support, if you do in the interim want to just help me out, click past videos, drop a like, drop a comment, watch the content. It's all free and easy ways to help support. Be greatly appreciated as we're kind of transitioning between spots. If there's any decks I missed, anything, any kind of standout cards, stuff like that, let me know in the comments. Appreciate everyone. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you next week.